Greetings and welcome to Old Drunken Discography, where old friends, fans come together, BS, argue, occasionally agree, and discuss a musical artist. It is Sabbath Sunday. This was Tim's pick. That's Tim.
You're welcome.
With me, as always, is Wild Bill.
Well, here we go again.
And I'm Jason. And it's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. We're talking Tier 1990. We are finally out of the 80s.
Are we though?
Are we though? That is the question.
Well, a lot of those 80s bands struggled. Not all
And
bands can
90s
be
is a big
not all
year,
bands can be
big
Aerosmith
year
and
for
bounce
him.
back in the 90s, you know.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna end this upcoming decade a lot different from this point, for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know. So, it's been a number of episodes since we've talked about our personal journeys with Black Sabbath. And if I could interject a little bit here out of this giant 20 album discography that I went through myself over the years, this was the last album that I picked up. This was the one that I was universally just kind of told, ignore it. Um, so it took me a little while. I did pick it up a couple years ago, though, and recently got the reissue on vinyl. Highly recommend. Um, because I can highly recommend this album. Like for the lineup, we got Tony Martin again, Cozy Powell again, Neil Murray's on bass, Tony Iommi, of course. Like it's a solid band. Um, we're still very far away from the glory years of yesteryear, and we are still very much chasing a hit, maybe, but we're also chasing credibility. Um, Another album, much like the last album, Headless Cross, produced by Omi and Cozy Powell. Starts off with Anno Monday. There is like a weird, somewhat theme to this album as far as Nordic, um, fairy tales, whatever you want to call them, stories, um, oral traditions. I think Anno Monday, like, it kicks off pretty strong, though. At this point, like, I was really happy with the way Cozy Powell and Tony Iommi interacted on Headless Cross. I think it improves here. The guitar drum work here throughout the whole album is really good. The Lawmaker's great. Jerusalem's pretty good. Sabbath Stones, I think, is really good. Um, and then you get to the B side, Battle of Tears, pretty good. Odin's Court's all right. Valhalla, I think that when the riff kicks in, that song takes off and becomes a highlight of the album. Feels good to me was the single. It's also the weak point on my album for me. I think there's a reason it's buried at the back of the B side. And then Heaven and Black, like one thing that this little period of Black Sabbath has going for it that I really like is when Tony Iommi and Cozy Powell close out an album. They've got a couple rippers at them, and they're just the drumming is incredible. The guitar playing, as always, is incredible. And I still think Tony Martin is doing an adequate job. There's nothing great about his performances, but there's nothing that's like really annoying. Um, and yeah, I think for 1990 and for as low as they are financially, um, I think this album actually is pretty solid. I was pleasantly surprised when I heard it, and it has yet to really disappoint me. So that's what I got.
All
You know,
right.
I kind of want to follow up
Okay.
and then let Jason, just, tell us we're idiots after this.
Someone's got to.
Yeah. Um, so I'm gonna say, before I get going here, I find it interesting. Just as Black Sabbath. I mean, we're on album number, I don't know, 12 or whatever the hell we're at right now.
I think we're even beyond that, even. Yeah.
We are. And, you know, it's 1990. The scene of music, I would argue, has changed a lot from their first albums, released in the 70s.
Oh, big
Incredibly.
T.
And
Yeah.
and this
Understatement of the year there,
album,
Phil.
yeah, and their album still only has 9 tracks. Like, and that's just like an observation as like I feel like at this point in the 90s, since we've covered other artists and whatnot throughout the years, throughout the episodes and whatnot.
Well, Rust in Peace was 1990. It only has 9 tracks.
Well, yeah, but like I feel like your standard like mainstream album is averaging between 15 and 18 tracks at this point. I feel
No,
like.
not
No,
at this point.
no, not at this
No.
No,
point.
not yet.
Yeah,
Like,
this is still very much we're phasing out vinyl and CDs really just becoming a
yeah,
thing.
it's like
Okay.
cassettes are big. It's like 12
Cassettes are
tracks.
big, yeah.
12 to
I mean,
Everything is still
14.
very much A
well,
and B side driven
so,
here.
so I started
Yeah.
with 12 tracks. I mean, so I overestimated the high end of the range, but it's still like it's only 9 tracks from that perspective though, which is still less than that 12. I mean, I understand, Anno Mundi, that's a 6-minute intro song, but that's what you've at this point come to expect, accept, and want from a Black Sabbath album.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Sure. Yeah. I
you're not going to
mean,
get much better, right?
No,
Headless Cross was 8, 9, 9, 9. What's your point?
well, no, no. My point is, I guess it isn't so much. It isn't that Black
It's like
Sabbath isn't
4 and
changing with the times,
5 on the A and B.
but like Black Sabbath's like, hey, this is what we want to do, and this is what we're gonna do. And Tony Iommi's like, just kind of has that linchpin there in the back of it, like, hey,
Well,
here's a
sure.
nine
That's
track
every
album.
album, though. Like, they're like, what are we going to do? We're going to do this to this week, and then we're going to do that next week.
But like that, and that's I
Sure.
guess that is kind of my point here with it. Like you know, respect that there is really in tier. I would still say there's no fluff in this, which having only 9 trucks, you would hope there's no fluff. But like there really isn't any. Like these are all 9 solid songs. Are they, you know, S tier,
Yeah, they're
best
not
metal
Iron
songs
Man
you've ever
good, but
heard?
for
No,
1990, they're doing pretty good, right?
they're doing great, honestly. I mean, we're on the verge of entering the grunge era. We're exiting, the glam bands, all that era of rock and whatnot. Like, and there's still, if you told me that Tear came out in the mid 90s, it was Black Sabbath, I'd believe it if you told me that this was, the Seventh Sun album or Seventh Star album. If you told me that this is what they released in the mid 90s, I'd believe you still. Like, this is still it's a solid to great Black Sabbath album. Tony Martin is still doing great on the vocals. He's cementing himself for me as easily top 3 Black Sabbath vocalists. Um,
Jesus.
Iommi, he's doing great stuff on the guitar on this album. He's not doing as great as he's done with some of the other stuff in the 80s, though, I would argue. Not to say
Well,
it's
and I would
bad.
almost argue too that this is still coming from a very 80s mindset.
I,
We'll get to it on a future album, but I don't think they enter the 90s until another shakeup happens.
I think
and
he's
I,
doing
I
better
believe
guitar
that.
work on this record versus Headless Cross. I'll say that.
I think
Ah,
I think the tone is better here on Headless Cross. But a lot of parts are pretty similar. I mean, it's Tony
It's still,
Iommi.
yeah, it's still,
it's still Naomi, but I would say
it's still
for me,
80s
Headless
driven.
Cross felt more creative isn't the right word, but it sounds more artistically driven, I guess maybe might be. I don't know if
Oh,
that's what I'm looking for, but
nah,
like so
nah,
I
nah.
feel like he art Iommi was I don't want to say given more freedom on Headless Cross, but like it felt like he was able to just play the guitar more on Headless Cross.
Uh,
Well, I think that comes down to that one being Cozy Powell's first album with him. So Cozy Powell is A, not speaking up as much, and B, probably playing a little less complicated. Where here, Cozy Powell steps it up a lot from Headless
Oh, yeah.
Cross. Like the drums on here are incredible.
Drums are
Um,
definitely a step up, no question about that. But like
Same
that being
guy.
said, like
So that has got to be purely just their relationship and what they're comfortable with, right?
yeah, which and that's fine, But yeah, I mean, an observation, at least again, my armchair observation here, like that, I would argue that it would still stand, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like I still feel like this was Iomi, maybe not necessarily a step backwards, but a step laterally in a direction that is not as how I want to say crazy, but not as unique
Crazy.
for Iomi as he had been.
all right. Well, let me. I want to agree and disagree with your ass.
That's fine.
I agree. Sure, 1990. It's Black Sabbath. But I'll disagree. I'll say for a 70s band in 1990, they're doing great. But as a band overall in 1990, they're not touching. This album's not touching the scene of 1990 versus even if you're talking metal, pop, mainstream rock, whatever. This album ain't touching that shit. Like it's not entering that. It's not breaking that. You're not getting the kids with Tear like you would with like a Aerosmith Pump or whatever. Like
Sure, sure. Well,
Yeah,
because Sabbath at this point has gotten pretty doomy.
yeah,
We've slowed down. Most people at this point are really into thrash and speed metal
yes,
and punk rock. People want things to go fast.
yes.
And
yeah.
Sabbath is just starting to really slow down. And uh, I mean, we're again, not to jump, but you could almost look at this album as the end of an era that started with Born Again.
I'd agree
It
with
is.
that
Yeah.
because what I just said wasn't like a negative per se. I'm just saying like don't give them credit for like this album's
Right.
not it hasn't broken
Yeah,
through.
it's not Rust in Peace.
Right. But I will say, just track by track, the opening track, I went from Outcast to this. That was a mood changer for sure. Still, though, this
Yeah, I
is a
went from this to Outcast.
that's a mood changer too. Oh, it was a decent opening track. The lyrical content game, I think, was stepped up from Headless Cross. The Lawmaker, let's fucking go. It's been a minute since
Forever, right?
it's been a minute since Black Sabbath fucking rocked. Just a top song contender. I love the start to stop rhythms that the rhythm section's doing during the guitar solo. Like that's cool as shit. Jerusalem is fine. It's track 3. It's solid. The Sabbath Stones. This sounds like Ozzy Sabbath. It's pretty fucking heavy. The vocal delivery is spot on for what you would think Sabbath would or should sound like. The Battle of Tyr, Headless Cross. It didn't have an instrumental, did it? I don't think it did.
No, it didn't.
Uh, I made the right call with Cross as the worst. This instrumental is fine. It flows well into the album. It's very Seven Spires isk. Odin's Court. This one's boring. It's not bad. It's just boring. There's not a lot happening, but it kind of works well in the context of the album. Right before Valhalla, I love the drums on it. That's a fucking ripper. Feels good to me. It's not bad. Again, it's a little on the boring side, but it's not bad. It does lean a little into that douchey 80s ballad territory.
We're still very much in power ballad. It's in
Yeah,
what's selling territory.
but I don't.
Yes.
It doesn't quite cross that line like Headless Cross did. Like it just borders it. And the
Okay.
closing track, I really like the vocal melody, interesting drum parts, wicked fucking solo, pretty decent overall. I didn't mind this one. They say it's not a concept album, and that's kind of true, but it is a very cohesive album. There's some thought process behind the song choices and the order of the album. Tony sounds great. I will say that it dawned on me why the Ozzy albums are some of the best. People say Ozzy, but you also got to look at the lyrical content. I think Geezer's lyrics on those early albums were thought provoking, and they were touching on like a lot of real world issues of the time.
Timeless.
Yeah, and now we're talking like this, and not just this album, but like
Well, and
since
so I've read some interesting things with Tony Martin. With which Tony Martin's got what, 3 albums under his belt now? That's the longest anybody's done since Ozzy.
yeah, until the next album, then they're tied, right?
Well, three in a
Well,
row though.
yeah, you got well, and then they'll tie for 3.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
tie for three.
They'll tie for 3, but this is the first time anybody's done 3 in a row since Ozzy. And
No,
I,
because yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. Everyone else was single albums. Yeah.
But it's different because like he
Dio
didn't
had
write a
2.
lot of Eternal Idol. Like Headless
Right.
Cross was the first one he really wrote for.
True. But he did Eternal Idol. That was the
Yeah,
official release. He did the tour.
yeah.
That's when Ray Gillen teamed up with Eric Singer, formerly of Black Sabbath, who was at the time in Alice Cooper's band and is about to be recruited by Kiss.
Which I got no
And
problem with Tony Martin's vocals. Like I think
he
Headless
does a
Cross
pretty good
feels
job, right?
like it's like Satan worship, like what you would think Black Sabbath, devil worshiping music. Like it feels very forced and like, whereas this feels more cohesive and more.
Well, yeah, and
The
that's where I was
lyrics,
headed.
yeah, the
They're
lyrics got,
finally gelling as a band
yeah.
because
I
this is
mean,
Cozy Powell's second album. Um, this is Neil Murray's first album. They've had a different bass player for the last 4 albums too.
yeah,
So yeah, it's an interesting album in that yeah, it is a band starting to find its feet again.
yeah.
And we're just gonna yank the rug out from under that here coming up next.
Yep.
But we'll get to there.
All right, well, let's rank it then. Let's fucking rank it. And
All these albums.
if you've been following along, let us know down below in the comments. It really helps us out when you leave us a comment.
Absolutely.
Where do you put Tier in these rankings? It's Bill's turn to guess. It looks like he's got the dot.
So I think Tim's gonna like this one above 7 star. But I think that's it.
Yeah. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Just above Mob Rules then, but not any higher.
You can go further than that even.
Okay. I mean, just technical accuracy. It's not going to be above Headless Cross, though, is it?
It's about here where it starts to like really start to question. It could either go here or be above Headless Cross, but I don't think it's better than Born Again.
Put it above Headless Cross for sure, man. Come on.
Yeah, I'm cool with that, but I don't think it's going to be better than Born Again.
All right, Jason's going to put it above Heaven and Hell just because it's fucking Heaven and Hell.
Of course.
Well, Headless Cross fell below it.
My point still stands. But I don't think he's going to have it above Eternal Idol.
You, sir, are wrong.
You're going to have it above Mob Rules then.
Well, that's correct, but you're still wrong.
Ooh. Ooh.
You're going to have it above 7-star?
Yes.
This is why I picked this band because I knew that the rankings were just going to get ridiculous because they're all so unique and interesting in their own little ways. That how do you end up comparing them? You know?
I like this one. Nothing. This is a pretty solid album. Nothing pissed me off. I feel like Tony's finally coming into the band.
Yeah, right. And cozy as well.
And he's going to leave shortly after this one.
Well, we'll get to that.
So
It's going to be a fun story. Fun story coming up.
This guy right above 7-star.
You're not going above Headless Cross, though?
I'm not putting this one above Headless Cross, though.
I mean, I do like Headless Cross. It is a good album. I think this one has a little more energy, though, and I like the guitar tone better.
Yeah, this one's
I liked Headless Cross better.
That is the worst. We'll get to the color code.
Yep.
Well, stick around for that. We're going to get to the color code. Up next, Dehumanizer. Which my old good pal Dio comes back for. Yay!
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but he's not our only returning champion.
No, he's not. No, he's not. Like Natalie and Borgia, I was torn. As always, be safe and make good decisions.
And then you go a little woo, and then a little whoop, 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 and then it's all, and then you're ready to go again.